Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing out there? Hey, Chloe, what's up? We are live here. It is what, 2:45 a.m.? Yeah, we're good here. Okay, the audio's working. We got everybody. I think Chloe, you're the only one with oh no, we got some people with us. Susan, what's up? Susan Donahue. What's up, everybody? Hello, Susan. Hello. It's freezing outside over here too. Yeah, it's freezing out here. We're going to get into it tonight or this early this morning right now. It is another episode of the Space Water Podcast, episode 39. And we're going to be continuing the series When the Sun Speaks, the flaming sword of Archangel Michael, the third secret of Fatima. We're going deep. Where are you guys from in the chat room? Where are you guys at right now? Chloe, I forget where Chloe is now. Where are you? Anybody got it colder than I got it right here? It's not that cold though, but it was cold enough where my car engine went out. My car engine block. Oh, Central Texas. Oh, so you can't complain about the cold. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You're not cold. Oh, yeah, well, Susan gets cold over there, San Francisco coast for sure. Welcome everybody. People are joining in, finally joining in the chat room. Hopefully we get a little bit more people in here tonight. I know it's early in the morning. I mean like early Friday morning here. Some people are going to work. I never stop working. I just put up some new products a couple of minutes ago. You guys can find some new Herkimer Diamond items have been going quick. Today's podcast, of course, sponsored by the Mystical Spiral Store.com. Of course, you guys can find my website right here. Mystical Spiral Store. I'm going to leave the 15% off coupon code for possibly for the whole weekend, but at least for the next 24 hours, we're going to leave it up. This was for the holiday weekend last weekend when we decided to leave the coupon code up for a little while. You guys can see the amazing new products. They've been going quick, actually, really fast. Just put up the new Herkimer Diamond, and guys, you can't get a better price for this anywhere else on the planet. Hand sourced Herkimer Diamond silver coated copper pendant. Can't get a better deal for that anywhere else. It's a pretty nice size Herkimer Diamond as well. You could see the size in my hand right there. Beautiful Herkimer Diamond pendant. Wow. Yeah, so before we even get started, let's give some prayers and give a moment for people in California that everything turns out all right. Because I know all over the planet, and I predicted this, everybody. I told you guys, volcanism, earthquakes are going to be triggered by the solar storms, right? By what's coming here from the sun, and we are in a huge solar maximum right now. And right now, these earthquakes, these volcanoes, the storms coming from the sun is literally activating and awakening and shaking up humanity. And we're going to feel this, and it's going to be a big, big change during the solstice, this December solstice, right? This winter solstice. And it quite possibly can be where you don't recognize the planet anymore. A completely different reality, a completely different mindset, a completely different shift of consciousness is heading towards many, many millions of people. And it's up to us to attune to that vibration. And sometimes traumatic, traumatic vibrations on the planet, earthquakes, volcanoes, things like this can actually activate things within the neurons of people's inactive neurons, inactive DNA literally can get you know, activated, awoken. Awoken's a word, right? Awoke, awoken. I don't know why I'm tripping on that word right now. Like it's not real, right? So this is very, very important to understand. And there's certain even species on the planets like dolphins and cetaceans, whales, dolphins that help maintain the vibrational frequency of the waters above and below and how the information is imprinted within the planet and the vibrational fields, right? The harmonic network of the planet is maintained and aligned by these species. They are messengers. They literally are cosmic messengers. And you're going to see a lot of these species as well, things transforming, things changing, not just with humans, but with other species on the planet. It's very important. And we've been getting signs from the sun for many, many, many years. And some of them come in the form of Marian apparitions. And the church has declared them as Marian apparitions, when in fact, the people themselves that had these experiences were not even calling them Marian apparitions. Of course, it was taken over by the church like this. So we're gonna get into and continue the podcast of what was it? I did episode 37. I did two of these podcasts, episode 37 and 37A and 37B. Well, we're gonna continue that and make tonight's gonna be its own podcast because we already had another episode after this with Robert Phoenix. So this is gonna be episode 39, the flaming sword of Archangel Michael, then the third secret of Fatima. But let's take a second first to do a moment of silence, of meditation. We'll take a few, just a second or two, not just for people to be safe in California, but for people all over the world, all throughout the solar system that are feeling anxiety, despair, tense, you know, anguish, and all of this pain and suffering that's happening on worldwide. Let's just give a moment to send out healing vibes, send out some sort of spark, some sort of token of not hope, but fire, a spiritual fire, a spark sent to people to give them that spark of life within them, to make them want to live and to thrive and to learn and to become part of, something bigger than themselves, and change this collective consciousness that we have on the planet that's in the sludge. It's in despair. It's been hoodwinked. It's been enchanted. It's been enslaved through materialism and greed. And we've been given amnesia. We've forgotten the spiritual being that we are, that's just encased in physical matter. And we've only become about maintaining our, financial status, um, all about greed, materialism, and we now worship people that are actors and people that are into entertainment and people that have a lot of money, instead of worshiping, the idea of being connected to something bigger than themselves, you know, actually being part of a network of spiritually attuned beings that are helping progress the harmonic evolution of the collective humanity, right? We as a whole collectively should be evolving, not just physically, but spiritually, right? Species change over time. We've changed over time, and we change according to our environment as well. But look what we're evolving into. And the sun has been speaking because we are being evolved according to our own vibration. It's our thoughts, our prayers, our energy, our vibration that's actually bringing the climate of Earth, that's changing the weather of Earth, the climates of Earth, the storms coming to Earth, the information traveling around Earth. It's all related to our vibration. We unfortunately have ruined this planet in many ways, and it's never too late to fix it. And the sun has been talking about this. The sun has been bringing us down chastisements. And this has happened before. This has definitely happened before. It's talked about all throughout history. Shout out to Susan Donahue, Chloe. Who else we got in the chat room out there? We're gonna give away some pieces of pink morganite gemstone too. The next person who orders from my website will get these, actually. I was making a pendant tonight before we get started further, and I actually broke the pink morganite gemstone when I was wrapping it. So now there's like really thin shards of it. So I'm going to give these away as gifts. I was going to make this really nice big piece of pink morganite into a pendant, but now they're like thin shards, but they're still really cool pieces. Look at this is gemstone of pink morganite, and they're pretty big shards of it. So I'm going to throw these in as a gift for people. Pretty nice shards of pink morganite gemstone. There's a couple other little pieces too, but whoever orders my next order will get these thrown in as a gift. I do have some beautiful pieces of pink morganite gemstone though still. I just got to be really delicate with them because I was trying to wrap it I was wrapping it in this royal cubit tensor, but I wrapped it too tight. It cracked the gemstone. Some of them are really delicate, especially opal, shungite. Shungite is hard to wrap, especially if you're using a thicker copper. Really. I mean, it's easy to wrap if you're using thin copper, but when you use a twisted copper, it's thick gauges, it could crack. I've broken a lot of shungite that way. This is like a shungite wrapped. It's not easy to wrap a delicate shungite with really thick twisted copper like that. All right. So once again, yeah, this is sponsored by the mysticalspiralstore.com. You guys see the website here. We got 15% off. You guys can still use that coupon code if you want. So check that out when you get a chance. So let's get in. Asked everybody, what the hell is going on? One just changed. Yeah, something's up with my microphone now. I'm using my Yeti's not working. There, now it's working again. I think there's something wrong with the wire here. All right. All right, I'm back. They're trying to keep me. First, Zoom wouldn't First Zoom wouldn't let me connect to YouTube for a while, and now the microphone's trying to give out on me. I mean, I can use the microphone from the this bright camera that I got here, but if I don't keep it bright, then you won't be able to see the green screen and stuff. But yeah, let me put this away real quick. I got these skulls out. I just was doing a reading for somebody before this, adding to the reading, using my solar council with the orange calcite skulls. You guys ever seen the solar council of skulls? The one big one. This one's like 15 pounds. This is orange calcite. This is a big, big guy. Really heavy. And this is bigger than human size. Bigger than human size, this one. Giant skull. It is heavy. Back here, you can see the better colors, I think, of it. The green screen coming in looking like Aurora's. Let me see with the shut. You can see the better light if I shut the light off. It's really got like hypnotizing eyes as well. The patterns in there. This is the master skull. And then we got four in the solar council, the north, south, east, and west. And here's the other three. This is the other orange calcite ones in the solar council. This bad boy. I love the orange creamsicle. Let me know if anybody wants to get any custom made ones like this. These are all orange calcites. All right. So last podcast that I did where it was just me solo, we were getting into the Fatima, the third secret of Fatima. And we have what's interesting here for the Space Water podcast is we have some of the most groundbreaking research and information that you literally can find out there. I mean, I'm talking about the most cutting edge information on science, religion, spirituality, and thought. And we're bringing it to you here at Exploring the Ka and on the Space Water podcast. Myself and some of the guests I bring on, and some of my colleagues that I work with, we're bringing you some of the most um, cutting edge information that you can find out there. And I'm trying to break it down where the average person can grasp some of the astrophysics and some of the advanced, not just the advanced astrologies and cosmologies, but some of the advanced mythology and the symbolism that has been used. So I have over 30 years background in mythologies, and I have over 20 years background in astronomy and astrophysics. So between the two of them, together, I've been able to find the connections and merge the spiritual and the scientific, how it was once merged during the adepts and the spiritual initiates of our ancient past, right? Because over time, everything got separated. You keep spiritual and the esoteric at one end, and you keep science at completely the other end, when in reality, they need to be merged. Oh, am I muted? There is no one without the other. Who is the Wiz of Oz? I'm not sure what that means. But I mentioned how the sun has been seeking to seers, especially to people like shepherds, people that are connected to nature and connected to the flow and the cycles of nature and the sun, right? When many of these apparitions and the people that experienced these apparitions, they never even said that it was the Virgin Mary themselves. It was just taken that way by the Vatican because well, I can't go into or even begin to speculate all the reasons why, but the basically the gist of it is because of power and domination, and because they needed to claim souls, right? You convert souls through these things. When you have some of these experiences that have transpired, that have become what is known as now Marian apparitions, they've converted millions of people through these experiences, through these apparitions that only one or two people saw sometimes, right? So, for example, Juan Diego in the 1530s, of the Virgin of Guadalupe, millions upon millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of Mexicans and people converted to Catholicism over this experience. Do you realize how powerful that is? Souls converting, giving their immortal, eternal soul over to that religion and their God. Converting, right? And that all happened from various apparitions. One of the most powerful one being that one in what was it, 1531, right? Now it has to do with the climate of the region and of humanity at the time, because if they were from Syria and it was a couple of thousand years ago, that experience would have been Astaroth, the heavenly goddess. Or if it was from ancient Egypt, they would have called it an Isis encounter, right? Or in Minerva to some people, right? It depends upon the climate of what's transpiring. So, of course, um, with this appearance in Mexico that happened at time, I mean, it was a time where there was it was needed, right, for certain things, especially for Catholicism, and it was really incredible. And then we had a period where Marian apparitions stopped, right? And then all of a sudden they reemerge in France in the 1830s, and started after that 1831. They started to periodically come, you know, accelerate. Well, why was this? Why did they disappear for a little while? Why was this so-called dry period of Marian apparitions? Well, it was also because of fear. I don't think they technically stopped. I think people stopped reporting them because of the fear. Now, we had the Protestant Reformation that broke out in Europe in 1517, right? Um, just when Cortez, Hernan Cortez was, uh, gonna invade Mexico and conquer Mexico, the Catholic Church at the time had lost millions and millions during the first 20 years of that Reformation, you know. But then by 1539, they were not only replaced, those lost during the Reformation, they magnified them by millions. Millions of souls converted to the faith. More than 9 million Aztecs. 9 million Aztecs converted as a direct result of the apparition in Mexico. And after that, how many millions since then? Who knows? Right? But then there was another dry period, and they run concurrently with these wars. The Spanish Inquisition was like a holy war, right? And then you have the Holy Roman Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition was literally established in the 1400s, sometimes the later 1400s, like 1480s, by the Spanish King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, right? And they also approved the Columbus expedition and subsidized the Columbus expedition to the New World in 1492, right? So think about that. And it was it's a method of control. The Spanish Inquisition was a method of control, right? And they had secret informants within it. They had all this stuff going on. Ruthless, ruthless actions were taking place. And the Holy Roman Inquisition pretty much started not long after the Juan Diego apparition. So we're talking 1531 was the Juan Diego apparition. And the Holy Roman Inquisition was first instituted in 1549 in Rome. And it was supposed to be to fight the Protestant Reformation and to stamp out heresy. So these apparitions, pretty much went on a halt. And the Spanish Inquisition didn't officially abolish until 1820. And the Roman Inquisition didn't officially cease until 1829. So then you have immediately after this, you have what's considered the modern day start of the apparitions. And this started in 1830, right after the Inquisition stopped. So it wasn't because there was a decline in these types of visits to humanity. It was people stopped reporting them. Yeah, all the mods showing up, no doubt. I always give mods out to people that check out my work and support me, and I gave out a lot of them at one time, I guess. No doubt, everybody's here. I think just there's one manager though. I made my wifey the manager, but I think there's like three or four more out there too. You got I think Johnny's one. Uh, I think there's like three or four more moderators out there. I think I have about eight or nine of them, maybe. Um, Let me know if people don't want to be one. I'll take you off the list. It's I just I figured I did it as like a sign of showing love to somebody for coming around. Um, so 1830 they restarted these Marian apparitions, and I don't think pretty much any of them really the person that was experiencing it, I don't really think they even said it was ever Mary or the Virgin Mary. It was just assumed that and people ran with it. Right? Even with Fatima, it wasn't Lucia, the main seer of it. She didn't ever say it was the Virgin Mary at first. It kind of was uh said that by her cousin and her cousin's father, Jacinta and Jacinta's father. They were the ones that said it has to be the Holy Mother. It has to be Our Lady. But it was never actually said that it was the apparition itself never said that she was the mother of Christ, right? So that's another thing we have to explore and mention as well. And to me, this is the sun speaking. We are in the flaming sword of Archangel Michael era, right? And Rudolf Steiner talked about this, that in 1879 we went into the age of Archangel Michael, right? Which is very interesting. Archangel Michael being the flaming sword of the sun. And this flaming solar flare, these solar thunderbolts of the gods, they're talked about in many, many stories. Uh, let me get out. So you guys can find the very first translations of this story in the so-called modern times, the rediscoveries of these ancient writings. You can go into the Transactions of Biblical Archaeology from 1877, volume 5. This is what I'm using right now. This is from the Transactions. You guys can see the book. Transactions of the Society of Biblical Archaeology. And this is volume, you know, oh, it's too bright. This is volume 5 from 1877, Society of Biblical Archaeology. All right, so the story of Bel and the dragon. Now, this is a fight between Bel and the dragon that has a flaming sword which turns every way. And this is a cosmic flame here, everybody. This is not on Earth. This is a in the heavens, right? And you also have a very, very similar description of that with the cherubim in the Holy Bible, right? They have this flaming sword that turns every way, north, south, east, and west, right? Well, the flaming sword of Bel and the dragon, the fight between Bel and the dragon, to me, has to do with the solar flare and the magnetosphere and the magnetotail, right? And this is a very, very similar story. And you have Michael and the dragon, Archangel Michael and the dragon story that's similar, Indra and Vitra, right? You have many different stories that have different versions. Wow, 3 days ago, I saw a beautiful woman and her dress was the universe. Who was she? Wow, that sounds like an ancient Egyptian newt or new or noon. This is very interesting symbolism. Well, if you have the Society of Big, this is from Volume 5, June 1876, Part 1, the fight between Bel and the Dragon and the flaming sword which turned every which way, every way. And this is also from Genesis 3:24, right? And this is translated from a Chaldean tablet, and it was translated by Professor Talbot, and it was read March 7th, 1876 to the Society of Biblical Archaeology. And this was one of their transactions of acquiring this tablet. And this is talked about as one of the most striking narratives of Chaldean mythology. It's found on a tablet lithographed in plates 44 and 45 of Diltschik's work. The Assyrian work, plate 44, describes Bel arming himself for the battle, and the dragon is merely mentioned on the plate but does not appear on the scene. Very interesting. Plate 45 describes the battle with its much animation, and the weapons which Bel wields are numerous and formidable. And the most curious was the flaming sword which turns every way, to the south, to the north, to the east, and to the west, and that no one could escape from it. And it resembles the sword of the cherubim in Genesis, which turns every way to keep the way of the tree of life, right? It's a celestial weapon. It's a celestial weapon of the gods, of God, of the universe, of the sun. That's why they even talk about the cherubim as having these golden wings. I actually think the Ark of the Covenant is completely being mistranslated. That if there was a box type thing created, it was only from mistranslation that it was created. That the actual golden wings and the Ark of the Covenant is the magnetosphere around Earth, and the golden wings of the sun is the cherubim, right? And it even talks about between the golden wings is where God speaks, right? Well, between the golden wings is the golden wings being the shield, the Garuda around Earth, and right as it shields the golden wings in between is the North Pole, right? And that's the spot where God speaks. That's the spot where the sun's information comes barreling through, right? The roaring force of the sun. Right? That is the meeting place of God where it speaks to the earth, right? And it is the hands of Bel, this sun deity, sun god, that had created mankind in the story, you know? Very interesting. So you guys can go to various different places, but this is actually one of the first translations that we have, and I definitely highly recommend you guys get the collections. If you're into research like this, you get the Society and the Transactions of the Society of Biblical Archaeology. They have the cuneiform and the English translation of the cuneiform. And this is a good starting point for you to translate yourself. All right. So you guys can, and this one is like 900 pages. This volume. I have many volumes of the Transaction of Society of Biblical Archaeology. I have some of the actual ones from the 1800s, the hardcovers, in upstairs in my collection. These are reprints of them, and they're still expensive to get the reprints, but they're well worth it because then you can mark them up. And these, like I said, they have the cuneiform in them and the English translations. And these are from the most learned people at the time. If you guys need help of knowing which ones to get, you guys can always contact me. My Patreon is the best place for that because I put all the book recommendations from my research, my references from the book that I'm writing, all in my Patreon. So you guys can check that out. And we could do a whole show talking about these. And this talks about the solar lightnings. This talks about that in here. I mean, it's being mistranslated by people. And like I said, the seers, they never really said that it was the Virgin Mary in many of these encounters, right? So it was just coerced that way, right? So you have the first so-called Marian apparition that transpired after these inquisitions in 1830 was the La Salle. It's spelled like Salette. I think it's pronounced Salé in French. It's L-A La and then Salettee, Salette or Salé. Um, this was one of the first. This was the first one, 1830. So, um, I don't think the first few one. I don't think. I mean, even Juan Diego. I mean, I don't think it was technically said ever to him by in the experience that it was. Yeah, it's 322 here. 222 is a very important date for right now. I mean, code going on. I don't think any of the Marian apparitions that anyone ever said it was the Virgin Mary except for the church and other people. Um, in 5 years after La Salle, when the one when Melanie, who was the principal seer, was 15 years old, she wrote to the Pope and she gave an account of these secrets, these classic secrets, and these are separate from the Fatima secrets. And she began this note by saying, "Most Holy Father," and this is on September 19th, 1846. Right? She said, "A lady appeared to me." She said, "A lady appeared to me. They say she is the Blessed Virgin. You judge by what follows if it might have been she." Which is saying the seer she said the lady's identification to the Pope, giving, alleviating herself of the responsibility, right? They say she is the Blessed Virgin. You judge by what follows if it might have been she, right? So she's saying that, other people are saying it's the blessed, it's the Blessed Virgin, right? And when was the Lord's encounter? Because this is all before Fatima. So you have in La Salle was in, oh no, so you had Paris, France was 1830. That was the first one. The 1831 was in Paris, France. So then you have Paris, France one. Then you have La Salle in 1846. All right. Like I said, that's when she wrote the note to the Pope. So 1846 is the La Salle apparition. right? And then you have Lords after that, the Lord's apparition. The Lord's apparition happens in 1858, right? This is all way before Fatima. And the Lords, the person that experienced that becomes a saint, actually, Saint Bernadette. But Bernadette never gave the lady's name of a holy virgin, right? Father Cross was one of the ones that was documenting the the Lord's the Lord's apparitions, and he was the one questioning her and wrote the history of the Lord's encounters. And after various encounters with this being, Bernadette insisted it is the others who say she is the Virgin Mary. So there you go, right there. And these were diabolical visions to her as well. She was getting these auditory psychic screams, demonic shrieks and shrills that she would hear during these Lord apparitions. So it was the other people that were making, you know, the seers had their doubts on it being the Virgin Mary, and it was Jacinta. These were the three we showed last show I did solo. These were the three seers from Fatima. That was Lucia. Let me get the other ones. So these were the three kids right here. Now, look at the somber faces. Look at these somber faces on these kids because of what they experienced. The vision of destruction that they were given, of chastisement they were given that was coming to this planet. You know, you can't believe the PTSD, and I can relate. This is why I'm so heavily invested in what's transpiring, is because I have been plagued with visions my whole life. I've witnessed my best friend dying, and it took 17 years for that vision to come to fruition. I had a horrible vision, a nightmare that woke me up of him drowning, and that took place 17 years later. And I thought it was going to happen like the next day after I had that vision. I had no idea about the time period of it. And it really, for a while, for the first couple of weeks after it happened, I spent almost every minute with the guy. He was my roommate. I was like following him around, I'm like, dude, I have to save your life. This is gonna happen. Like, and I don't know if I diverted it for a short amount of time, but then he literally moved out of California where we were living at the time, moved back to Arkansas, and it ended up happening there. It was a very specific dream, and he died the exact same way. So there's been various things that I've seen throughout my life that have come to fruition like that. And I had an experience in the Cesar Chavez Park in 2002 where I was given a vision of just apocalyptic PTSD type. And this experience actually messed up my nervous system. Still to this day, I have effects from it. The way I have sensory issues with certain things, the way how certain sounds and vibrations affect me, certain just it rocked my nervous system. and it never fully recovered from that experience. And I can say that from the look on these children's faces, they went through a similar thing. And one of the encounters and one of the apparitions that that transpired, literally beams of light came out of the woman's hands and opened up the ground, and she saw a pit of fire and souls burning in it and all sorts of stuff, right? Now, the sun was giving these holographic type images through the light. This is a plasma technology directly from the sun or directly from an alien or outside source using the sun's capabilities as technology, right? I actually think it's the sun itself speaking. And the way to speak to humanity isn't a spiritual sort of religious way. This is how to change and really speak to the human being. And all of the characteristics of the encounter has to do with solar phenomenon. Every time before the apparition began, there was thunder, there was lightning flashes, there was some sort of solar phenomenon transpiring. There was an unusual activity that just could not be made up by these kids. Lightning on a sunny day without thunder was the first unusual phenomenon that took place in the Cova de Aria. This is a place that was, I think, owned by Lucia's family at the time. They were shepherds of this area. And during this first apparition, the seers, they were alone. They were the only ones who witnessed it during the first one. And it was lightning that first caught their eyes. A lightning on a sunny day, a flash, and they were out there watching sheep. They were shepherds, very connected to the sun, very connected to the weather, very connected to nature, and they were all questioned. This is all documented. And Father Jose Ferreira de la Cerda, he was the one who first questioned Lucia in 1917. And he asked her, "What were you doing when you saw Our Lady for the first time?" They're already saying Our Lady, right? Already claiming it. And she answered, and we were watching sheep. It was sunny. There was a flash of lightning. And I said, "Oh, Francisco, we had better go because a thunderstorm is coming." And then there was another flash of lightning. And then she said, "I looked toward the oak tree and I saw a lady on top of it." So, oak trees are the first places to usually get struck by lightning because they're the tallest structure in the area, right? And oak trees are powerful, powerful, alive beings. They transmute the light. These plants and trees, like they're like antennas for the light. We can't even possibly fathom the intelligence of an oak tree, right? And the amount of species that the oak tree can host as well and provide things for. It's incredible. Not to mention what they do with the light and photosynthesis with plants and everything that is involved with trees and plants. They're just amazing, right? Especially oak trees. They've been used in mythology as well for, thousands of years. And the first apparition, the very first time she saw this being after a flash of lightning, the being was literally right there above the oak tree, right? Incredible. That's incredible, right? So this is lightning on a sunny day without thunder, and this was the very first unusual phenomenon that was observed at that Cova da Aria. Um, Now, in the months that followed, it was the lightning that would announce that the apparition was about to arrive, you know. And in September around noon, they were there waiting, and then there was a flash of lightning, and then the apparition appeared. So these flashes of lightning, these light blasts, all right, this is what was triggering the apparition. And the apparition was only seen by the seers. And I think it was only the one, Lucia, that was able to have dialogue with the apparition. And this was going on from May 13th until October 13th, and Lucia actually wrote in one of her memoirs many, many years later that the flashes of lightning were not actually lightning, but a reflection of a light that was drawing near. That's what she wrote. She said that seeing that light is the reason we said sometimes that we would see the lady, but more accurately, we could only distinguish the lady in that light when it was already atop of the oak tree. And then in relation to the June apparition, Lucia wrote, after praying the rosary with Jacinta and Francisco and the others present, we again saw the reflect of the light that approached that we called lightning. So it was a sort of light, some sort of lightning that seemed like lightning, like a flash. A lot of this is done with UFO encounters as well. That flash. And I do believe it was some sort of plasma craft that was sent from the sun in certain one of these, and it's some sort of probably some sort of plasma type of craft that can beam almost like a holographic type of image from the plasma light that could form right out of the light. And when you got so many parallels in UFO encounters as well, I mean, it's very interesting. And of course, the last apparition, you had 70,000 people in Portugal that witnessed it. I do think that 2025 is one of the fruition visions, one of the visions that's going to come to fruition is going to take place in 2025, according to me, and even Alice Bailey talked about that. Now, when the spread of the news of these apparitions began, diverse people started to travel to Portugal, this area of the Cova de Areia, from June to October. They're, you know, they were never alone, these kids. They were, constantly crowds of people. And, you know, it's incredible. It's incredible how many people were in the Cova de Areia on the last operation in October where the miracle of the sun transpired. It was like 70,000 people that were there. Now, you had sometimes 15 to 18,000 Portuguese gathering near this oak tree, and it was crazy. And at one point, they were imprisoned. During one of the apparitions, they were imprisoned. So, and they were getting questioned separately. But there has been so many other testimonials by people that witnessed things during these apparitions, even a fourth seer that we're going to get into. But let's talk about the 1917 for a second, because the initial description of the being, right? Let's go back to that, right? Because Jacinta and Francisco was at the summit of the slope of the Cova de Iria. Uh, they were making a little wall around a thicket when they suddenly saw what seemed to be a flash of lightning. They said, "It's best we go home." Lucia said to her cousins that lightning is flashing, a thunderstorm could be coming. As they began descending the slope, touching the sheep in the direction of the road, they heard or less reached the middle of the slope. They had or less reached the middle of the slope, just close to a large oak tree when there was the flash of lightning. And after several more steps, they saw a lady over the oak tree. Now, that is the beginning of the very first encounter. And the being spoke to Lucia. They heard the buzzing of bees, in fact. And obviously, this being was speaking Portuguese. So they never said it was telepathic. They said the being was speaking to them. And the news was spreading throughout the village. And I think it was June 13th, because it started on May, but on June 13th, part of the neighborhood started to come to the site of the apparitions. Not many, but there were about 40 people who were first present, wrote Ignacio Antonio Marquez in his writings when he was documenting it. Not many at first. There was about 40 who were first gathering, and they were anxiously waiting in this deserted place for the Queen of the Heavens, right? Very, very interesting way of describing it, because this is the same way it's described in ancient times as Minerva or Diana or uh, Anath or Astaroth or Atergatis, or all of these ancient goddesses are described that way, right? And this one descended to the oak tree, and you know, there's all different writings. You have the one, uh, Maria de Freitas, who wrote a book about Fatima, attributed to the father João de Marchi, who was a Fatima chronicler, and they captured the first day in which these onlookers participated, and among them was one of them was her name was Maria Carrera, who was a simple countrywoman, and described to the journalists her memories of this event. And she said at the same instance, Lucia jumped up and explained, "Oh, Jacinta, there she comes already. There was the lightning." And then they ran to kneel at the foot of the oak tree. And they said, "And did you not see anything when these children did that?" And she said, "Me? No, I didn't see anything. And no one boasted about having seen the lightning. We could follow the children and kneel in the middle of the field. Lucia would raise her hands and say, 'You bade me come here. What do you wish of me?' And then they could hear a buzzing that seemed to be that of a bee. And she took to care to discern whether it was the lady speaking. So while Lucia was so called having dialogue with this vision, the people that were witnessing it, they didn't hear anybody speaking to Lucia. They heard the buzzing of bees, what sounded like the buzzing of bees. Now, this sounds like a technology, right? Very interesting that it's some sort of like, maybe like what they call Project Blue Beam, like a blue beam or some sort of, like I said, a plasma type technology that's interfacing with the intended target. It's literally being beamed down, possibly from a craft, And the person who's interfacing with it is basically communicating with some sort of, intelligence in the light. But an outside source would probably only hear it as the buzzing of bees or some sort of drone-like sound. That's very interesting. Very interesting. And then the reporter asked, "Everybody can hear the buzzing of a bee?" And then Maria Carrera answered, "Yeah, everybody heard it very well." Now, this buzzing of a bee is the voice that's attributed to the Fatima apparition. And this was a well-known publicist that was writing about this. So imagine that. The person that was interfacing with this apparition was communicating in Portuguese. Everybody else that was witnessing it heard the sounds of an insect. That's very interesting. Some sort of insectoid type of buzzing, and it's very insect-like noises that they heard. And this was like everyone heard it around, and this same witness recounted this same episode to Father João Di Marchi in his work that's called Ira uma Senhora mais brilhante que o sol, which means it was a lady more brilliant than the sun. And in it, it says, "I had been sick and was feeling very weak. It must have been around midday or noon when Lucia was asked, 'Will Our Lady be long delayed?' 'No, ma'am, she will not be long,' she responded. The tiny child was waiting and watching for the signs. They were praying the rosary, and when the girl from Belarus was going to begin the litany, Lucia interrupted her. And remember now, Lucia is this one on the right, the far right here, the only one who survived after these other two on the left, who's Francisco and Jacinta in these. They died within 2 years of the apparitions, and this was prophesized in the apparitions. Right? She said that she will be taking Jacinta and Francisco to heaven very soon, but Lucia is going to stay around some time more. And this did come to fruition very, very quickly. They died of the influenza. So, uh, she was watching for the signs, right? They were praying the rosary and all this. And then Jacinta says, "There comes the lady. The lightning has struck." Now, everybody is calling it Our Lady now, that it's the Virgin Mary. But remind you, these seers never said that. It was Lucia was the one communicating with the one with the apparition, and Lucia never said that. It was the lady, the girl on the left here, Jacinta, and Jacinta's dad, who was saying, "Oh, it must be the Virgin. It has to be Our Lady." And then the crowd rolled with that. They went with that. So it was never said by the apparition or by the girl communicating with the apparition that it was the Virgin Mary. Let's make that clear throughout this. I said it earlier, but people that are joining us now, you know. So when all the three children, when they saw the lightning flash, they run to the oak tree, and other people ran behind them, and they knelt before the thickets and the shrubs, and Lucia lifted her hands in prayer, and I heard her say, this is their account, Maria's account, "You bade me to come here. Please tell me what you want." Then we began to hear something like this in the matter of a very fine voice, but what it said could not be comprehended or put into words, for it was like the buzzing of an insect or bee. But that buzzing did not disturb the silence of the mountain only in June. The following month, word spread throughout the entire region, and nearly 4 to 5 thousand people found their way to the Cova da Aria. And Jacinto de Almeida Lopez was proprietor of the site of the shrine later established by the parish of Fatima. He was among them, and he could be one of the eyewitnesses that were chosen by the parish priest to testify during the inquiry. And the parish priest, writing in the third person, related this evidence given by Lopez. Then was it that what is it you want from me? After this question, she waited in silence. So that is what Lucia was saying to the apparition. This is during the apparition where all these people were there. After this question, she says to the apparition, "What is it you want from me?" After this question, they waited in silence for a short period of time, and this is another person's testimony now. They waited for the response. After a brief silence, he heard, as if coming from the oak tree, a faint voice, similar, he says, to the humming of a bee, but without being able to distinguish a single word. So this is more people having the same testimony, that they heard some sort of voice, but it wasn't distinguishable. It was like a humming of a bee or an insect. The only one that was able to understand this voice was Lucia, the one interfacing with it. And apparently the voice was speaking in perfect Portuguese. Another testimony. In July, Manuel Marto, the father of Jacinta and Francisco, the two on the left here, made his way to the site for the very first time. Now, this is the third month of the apparitions. He was questioned as to what he experienced, and he told the guy questioning, who's João de Marchi, he was the chronicler, the publicist and journalist. He said, "I heard a sound like a din, like such as a great fly makes inside an empty water pot, and wondered whether it was far off or close by." Now, this is the father of the two children on the left here. And he said that he heard the speaking of this apparition, but it sounded like a din, like the sound a fly makes in an empty water pot. And he couldn't distinguish whether the sound was far or close. And he also gave very odd comparisons when when he was interrogated about the same matter that we're talking about by an Italian priest that was named Umberto Pasquale. He affirmed, "I heard something like the buzzing of a fly inside an empty barrel, but without articulation of any words." Then Pasquale, the priest, he added, "Mr. Manuel Marto explained to us that during the entire duration of the appearance, those present heard an indefinable sound like that which is heard next to a hive, but altogether more harmonious, even though words were not heard." Incredible. Now, in this very same month, there's another testimony in the writings. And this actually demonstrated that the buzzing must have been heard quite well, which, as a matter of fact, Maria Carrera stated before, that it was heard quite well by everyone, right? Well, Antonio Baptista from Moita, which is in the parish of Fatima, was then 50 years old when this happened. When he was interviewed by the Viscount of Montello on November 13th, 1917, he declared the following: "On July 13th, I was at the Cova da Aria. Lucia, when she knelt, I thought I heard at that moment a little wind, a zoa zoa sound. While Lucia was listening to a response, it seemed there was a buzzing sound like that of a cicada." So another one saying that it sounded like an insect was speaking. Now, many people claimed that the apparition was speaking, that it could be heard. And this guy, Mr. Bento, he wrote that, and it was, I think this was penned on October 13th of that year, of the October 13th encounter. Many people say that when the apparition was speaking, that it could be heard, but they could not distinguish what she was saying. One witness made a reference to the sound of the speech. Manuel Goncalves Jr., a 30-year-old farmer from Montello, the place name that the canon that Mr. Formiga, who was part of the church, he adopted this as a pseudonym. Also declared on October 11th, some people have affirmed that they hear the sound of the answers, that the answers the apparition was giving, that they were hearing this insect sound, right? Well, go all the way to 1978, right? You still had some people alive from this 1917 encounter, and you had some other people doing investigations now, right? Still, and then the authors of a book that I'm using some references from, Mr. Joaquin Fernandez, right? He wrote a book about this called Heavenly Lights. The foreword in the book is even written by Jacques Vallée. Now, he in 1978, on July 18th, he interviewed some of the relatives of the seers that you see here up on my screen and on your screen. You got from left to right, Jacinta, Francisco, and Lucia, right? So in July 18th of 1978, right when I was born on July 12th, 1978. Relatives of the seers and the eyewitnesses that were still living were once again interviewed all these years later. One of the people with whom they interviewed was Lucia's sister, Maria dos Anjos. Now, she was sitting in an armchair beside the house where she was born in, even living out the rest of her days, smiling to these daily visitors that would come by. I mean, it's really traffic over there. And she narrated the story to them that had forever altered the life of her family, right? And she wrote this. Did you know this is the questions that they were asking her in the dialogue. Did you know Maria Carrera? We asked on that hot summer afternoon. I knew her well, as I knew my own mother. She said that when Our Lady would speak, she would hear something like the humming of a bee. I also heard that little buzz. I also got to hear it, but I knew not what it was. Was it as if there were many bees? We asked. No, only one, she responded categorically. Do you recall what month that was? At the time, I did not go there every month. It seemed that as if a bee was around there whenever Lucia was listening, but I have no idea what it was. I have no idea what it was, her statement, right? It wasn't understood what they were saying. Now, very interesting that it would be some sort of insect type response that they were hearing, or the faint buzz or the buzzing of bees. Now, this has been mythology that has gone along with so many goddesses throughout history. Goddesses be able to lure people to sleep and put them in the trance with the sound of with the drone of buzzings of bees. You have many goddesses throughout history that were called goddesses who came down and gave heavenly encounters here on earth that brought the sound and the lull of the drone of the buzzing of bees. This has been going on for, since recorded history. It's very, very ancient, right? Very, very ancient. Who do we got in the chat room? Isaac, what's up, Isaac? Isaac is here. Guys, smash that like button. You guys can also support me here. Even $1.99 helps, pal. What is up with my microphone? This is crazy because my friggin' mic is not working again. I have to switch to the camera mic. That sucks. Yeah, what is going on with this shit? It won't even take my Yeti mic right now. That sucks.